With the Death Note movie analysis out of my system, I think it's time to do the real deal. The true analysis. A breakdown and understanding of one of the best animes of our time. And when you talk about Death Note, you talk about...
Justice. Justice.
Justice.
Justice. I am justice.
Yeah, what they said. It's impossible to talk about Death Note without diving into justice, because at its core, justice is the underlying theme of the entire series. So, what is justice? Everyone from Wisecrack to MatPat has taken a stab at that very question, but now I think it's time to drop some live-in air freshener knowledge on y'all. Also, if Wisecrack and MatPat ever make a collab channel, my vote for channel name is, MatCrack. Now, before I begin, I do want to acknowledge that other creators have done amazing jobs covering Death Note. Wisecrack's breakdown of justice in their video was phenomenal, and I don't really want to go into the specific topic of what justice is because I feel like it's been thoroughly covered. However, if you've seen Death Note, then you know there's much more to talk about than just the question of what is justice. Death Note is a work of art that gives the audience not just one question about humanity, but many that are pinpointed to make ourselves question our own values. It specifically targets the human condition when seen through a lens of justice. Side note, Lens of Justice is a great Glasses superhero name. Just saying. But Death Note questions our humanity and whether or not we can keep our sense of justice. How do we, as humans, define it? And does that definition change when we suddenly are given away around getting caught? That's what I want to talk about today, the effectiveness power can have on our sense of humanity, justice, and control. Death Note is not just an anime about a brilliant killer who changes the world in his image. It's a dialogue about opposing views and the loss and regaining of humanity, and potato chips. So bite down on some salty trans fat and spike that cholesterol as we dive deep into what Death Note tells us about Light Yagami's humanity and, indirectly, our own. In the story you never knew. Let's begin by talking about Light Yagami, aka Kira, aka Ladies Man number 1! Light as a character at the beginning of the anime is actually kinda meh. He's the smartest guy in his grade and one of the best high schoolers in all of Japan and probably the world. He doesn't really seem to have any flaws. He's popular, people want to date him, people want to be him, both his parents are alive, and he has a loving family. All in all, a pretty flawless character, and while that doesn't usually make for good character development, in this case it absolutely does. You see, in most films, TV shows, any form of entertainment really, the main character we're watching has flaws. Sometimes they're something really obvious like with Forrest Gump, and sometimes they're more subtle like every video we make about Mario. Either way, a main character needs flaws to be able to attract an audience into following. An audience needs to relate to a character, see the flaws that character has within themselves, and then see that character overcome those flaws and succeed. It makes us feel like we can do the same. That's a fairly generic and simplified story arc for a main character, but if you look at the majority of film or TV series, this is exactly how the main character's progression arc is plotted out. Yet Light really isn't like that at all. At the start of the series is where he's the most put together and the most perfect version of his character. And as we watch Death Note, Light's character devolves into something almost animalistic. Just take a look at him in the first episode versus the last. He looks deranged, erratic, almost inhuman in his aggression towards the end of the series. This devolution in Light only begins when he picks up the Death Note and starts using it. He even says,
"There must be something wrong with me to even consider it."
Right after he gets the Death Note. What we're seeing here is an immediate corruption of power. Light, as a high schooler, had no real power in the world. He saw things he didn't like, he knew the world was filled with those who prey on the innocent, and yet he felt he could do nothing to fix it despite all his braininess. You can hear his internal dialogue on the matter at the beginning of the series.
Day in and day out. The same news on permanent repeat.
We can tell from the beginning of the series that Light feels the world needs fixing. He was preparing to go to school to become a detective, to help his father fix the world as best he could. Light was on track to gain power, but even policemen must answer to higher officials. Had the Death Note never fallen to him, Light may very well have lived a fulfilling life, feeling he was doing his part cleaning up the world's messes. But when an unspeakable amount of power falls to just one individual, a power that cannot be checked and cannot be matched, it tends to change the person who controls it. When Light receives the Death Note and realizes its true power, he immediately begins using it to clear the world of the most despicable and horrible people he can think of. Light does this at what he believes to be the cost of his own life. This shows where Light truly falls on the justice spectrum, while shedding light on what he believes about justice and killing at the beginning of the anime. Light realizes the notebook is real, and he believes a Shinigami will punish him for using it. Yet, despite those consequences, he uses the notebook as much as possible between his finding it and Ryuk's introduction. When Ryuk does find Light, Light explains that he was waiting for a Shinigami and is prepared to give up his soul for what he's done. What we're seeing during this part of the story is Light using his newfound power while completely aware of the consequences he believes it will bring. He wrongfully believes that he doesn't control the full situation, that this gothic clown from another world will have power over him, and not the other way around. He's willing to risk his soul if his sacrifice will make the world a better place, and that's what Light believes he's doing up to this point. When Ryuk tells Light that he has no intention of doing anything to him and that he has complete free reign to do whatever he wants with the notebook, that moment changes something in Light. He now knows he can steal from the cookie jar and not get caught. Only in this case, cookies are human lives. So the question becomes, what happens to Light from this moment forward? Light started as a boy who would risk his own soul just to make the world a better place. He knew what he was doing was wrong. Otherwise, why would he expect to get punished? Light, in these short 5 days before Ryuk came to Earth, believed that his goal of killing those who were evil was indeed an act of evil. As the saying goes, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Killing someone who has killed doesn't make it the just thing to do. Right? Well, it's not so black and white. Just talk to anyone who's pro-death penalty and you'll see the issue is much more complicated than a simple yes or no answer. But in this case, it seems like Light did believe he would be punished for his actions. He believed that justice would catch up with him in the form of a soul-sucking clown school dropout Shinigami. When that justice doesn't come, when his actions aren't met with consequences, Light's entire definition of justice starts to change. Now Light has complete control over the Death Note, with no one in nothing to stop him. He can kill freely without any worry of getting caught or punished for his actions. Or at least that's how it was up until L shows up. L's introduction is another turning point in the anime. Remember, we just established that Light believed what he was doing wasn't actually just, but he felt it was the best thing for the world overall. He was willing to die for his cause. The key word there being was. When L shows up and challenges Kira, we get this iconic scene from the series.
I will hunt you down wherever you're hiding, and I will eliminate you. I am justice.
Suddenly, Light doesn't seem so certain that what he's doing is wrong. In fact, moments before this scene, we see Light with a crazed look, much like the face of a teenager walking in on their parents doing the do. In fact, that look is a good stepping stone towards Light's face at the end of the anime. What we're seeing here is L challenging Light after Light has developed a god complex. Now, what exactly is a god complex? I mean, we hear Light many times explain that he will become the god of the new world. But what does that actually mean in terms of his mentality? Well, someone with a god complex believes that they have a supernatural or godlike power. They feel that they are above the rest of society and should be exempt from society's rules. This certainly didn't describe Light when he started using the Death Note, but as early as the 2nd episode, we see that Light's god complex is in its full effect as he takes L's challenge to heart. This is the effect of power and control on the human condition. We saw where Light began versus where he is now after a relatively short time of being unchecked. Light is the example of what can happen when we humans aren't checked by our society, by consequences, by anything. We lose sight of what is and isn't okay because there's nothing to stop us when we cross a line. This warps Light's idea of justice. It allows him to truly believe that anyone who may catch him is worth killing because everything he does will be justified if he is able to succeed in creating a new world. And he's fairly right on that part. Light said it himself, if Kira wins, then he's justice. If he loses, then he's a murderer. If Light had been able to redefine justice for the entire world so that the definition is one and the same with Kira, then he's won. Society would agree that whatever he does is justified because Kira literally is justice. But that's not what happened, and that's a good thing. We can see just how far Light has fallen from his former self halfway through the anime and at the very end. Light's return to his former self halfway through the anime is a vitally important plot arc in the series. It shows us who Light is without the corruption of the Death Note. The rules of the Death Note give us a unique opportunity to see someone become corrupted by an unchecked power, lose that power in an instant, and gain it back again just as quickly. When Light does give up the Death Note and loses all memories of it, we see who Light truly is, who he was pre-Demon Goth Clown. And what do you know, Light has morals! He won't take advantage of people, he's not all or nothing, he believes in laws and rules. When you take the power away from the all-powerful, they resort back to our understanding of justice. Just look at the example Light gives us when he relinquishes the Death Note. L asks Light to take advantage of Misa's infatuation of him in order to get more information about the killings. Light chivalrously declines L's offer, showing that he's not going to do anything to find Kira, unlike L and unlike Light with his Death Note memories. Then later on, during the chase scene with Higuchi, L offers Light a gun as protection, and Light declines, saying that civilians aren't allowed to own guns. These two examples prove that Light, without the corrupting power of the Death Note, conforms to society's rules of justice, even more so than L. Yet as soon as Light's memories return, we see him go right back into taking advantage of Misa and doing anything to continue his pursuit of a new world wherein he is the judge, jury, and most importantly, executioner. So what does this mean in terms of our analysis? Well, it shows us that Light isn't anyone special here. He has the same values as you or me. He wants the same things as us. Light is a normal person, albeit incredibly bright. But there isn't anything particularly special about him. This means that Light could have been anyone. He picked up the Death Note, but in reality, it could have been anyone at his school or in the world. Where a Death Note lands from the Shinigami realm is just chance. Ryuk didn't choose Light. He wasn't watching and waiting for the perfect person to pick it up. And that's the real lesson Death Note hides within its other themes. Power can corrupt anyone. Not everyone, but anyone can fall victim to its clutches. We see Light's father on his deathbed, with Light offering him the power to kill, and he doesn't accept it. Not everyone will fall victim to unchecked power like Light would, but enough of us would that it should be acknowledged as a vice of humanity. When we're given too much power, too much control of everything in our lives and the world, we lose our humanity and see ourselves as above it. A god complex is not unique to Light. Narcissism runs rampant in positions of power, in people we see on the TV every day. World leaders who have lost sight of the people they represent. Kim Jong-un is just one example of a person who falls into this trap. I'm sure you can think of at least one or two others from history or today off the top of your head. But here's the thing. Did these people start with god complexes? Were they always narcissists, or is narcissism a symptom of a larger problem? A human problem. When we are given too much control over ourselves and others with no one to stop us or check us when we do something wrong, who is going to keep us from hurting others, from abusing our power? There's an old saying, who will guard the guards, which refers to this issue. If you give the power of weaponry and wealth and influence to one individual, what keeps that person from using everything they've been given for their own gain instead of yours, or the country's, or the world's? Light Yagami is the embodiment of this flaw in humanity. When we're given too much, we lose sight of what it means to be human. We believe we're above those who are our equals, and we fight to keep ourselves from ever coming back down. Light is just one person who was given an impossible gift, and it corrupted his humanity to a breaking point where he almost seems inhuman. When one person has no restrictions and all the power, their humanity ceases to exist. When we're wondering how world leaders can hurt their own people or knowingly kill others, waging wars and killing thousands with a single command, the answer is Light Yagami's demonic transformation. And that's the story. You never knew. Light Yagami sure is an interesting guy, huh? Sometimes I wonder what I would do with the unchecked power to kill. I'd probably start a bakery, because if you don't buy my cookies, I'll kill you! Changing the game of entrepreneurship. What would you do with the power to kill like Kira? It's a weird question to ask, but let's see those dark sides, people! Besides that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and of course that little bell so you get notified when more steamy Treesicle goodness is fresh out of the oven. You don't want to keep yourself waiting, do you? Great! Also, there's probably some social medias floating around. Thanks to everyone who's followed us, and as always, thanks to everyone who watches our content in general. It means a lot, and you're beautiful for making me feel beautiful. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of here before things get weird. I'm Grant, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everyone!